Good afternoon, class. So, in today's zoology lecture, we are going to see an important topic that is called hormonal control of human reproductive system and the pregnancy in women. So, in this lecture, we are going to see about like how our hormones have a control over the human reproduction, means how they can going to influence our pattern, and also the pregnancy inside the woman, how the pregnancy pattern can influence by how it is kicked up by when and what month of the pregnancy, what kind of hormones going to influence on what method. So these are the things which we are going to see in this lecture. Let's begin with the introduction. So, the human male and female reproductive cycles are controlled by the interaction of hormones from the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary. So, these two terms, okay, these two terms, this hypothalamus and anterior pituitary, you just have to be remember them like whole of the phenomena when you are study about the hormonal controls, because they are the key elements which are responsible for the secreting of most of the, you can say, most of our hormones inside the body. Their secretion, their regulation is controlled by these hypothalamus and anterior, not only anterior pituitary, the pituitary gland. That's why we call them the master gland. So, also in our reproductive matter, or also in our reproduction in the humans, both in the male and the female, they have their own reproductive cycles, and these all the cycles and whole cycles of these, they are the result of the interaction, or you can say that they are controlled by the interaction between the anterior pituitary, hypothalamus, and our reproductive tissue and organ. So these all things combinedly working in a manner that can be grow and develop our reproductive organs. In both the sexes, the hypothalamus monitors and causes the release of hormone from the pituitary gland. Okay, so the monitoring agent here, the one which is controlling things, that is the hypothalamus that is going to monitor, and they are going to cause, or you can say, they are going to govern pituitary to secrete the hormones which are going to responsible for the growth of reproductive cycle. So when the reproductive hormones is required, okay, whenever inside our body, when we need reproductive organs, the hypothalamus send a gonadotrophin releasing hormone. This GnRH, you just remember this hormone GnRH. This is a key factor in our reproductive pattern or in our reproductive cycles. And this has, you can say, this gonadotrophin releasing hormone. This basically govern or stimulate the gonadotroph hormone behind it. So this was going to be secreted by the hypothalamus. So now when it all process start, the first thing hypothalamus do to release the GnRH to the anterior pituitary, where it going to be secreted to the anterior pituitary. This cause to release the follicle stimulating hormone. Second hormone to be remembered, follicle stimulating hormone called FSH, and the you can see the complementary to it, to the luteinizing hormone, that is called LH. So here you can see that these three inducting hormones of the reproductive cycle, which releases in a very preliminary form to maintain or to induce the reproduction cycle inside the male and female body. So you just need to remember gonadotrophins, and after gonadotrophin, that go to the pituitary, anterior pituitary, and then anterior pituitary is going to release the FSH and LH. So now how they can relate it, you can understand. Hypothalamus we need as a first primary thing. Hypothalamus is going to produce GnRH. GnRH then go to the pituitary gland, and they will going to induce the secretion of follicle stimulating hormone FSH and the other one, luteinizing hormone, that is LH. So they will be going to secrete by the anterior pituitary to govern the reproductive cycle. Note that the body must reach puberty in order to the adrenal adrenal to release a hormone that must be present for GnRH to be produced. So, for the reproduction, if the body need or if the body if you wanted to have and seen the reproduction inside the human body, the body should be attained the puberty. Without having the puberty inside the body, we will never going to able to release this GnRH, because that only can be able, because if the body is not ready, we cannot do the reproduction inside the human body. So for ready of the for having the puberty, that is the sense for the body that after this stage you can have the reproduction. But still not just after the puberty you cannot reproduce the body, because it is a very complex process and your body needs several steps before it. So that's why just not even in the puberty condition, but after some years of puberty your body is all set for the reproduction. Although FSH and LH are named after their function in the female reproduction, so this FSH, they are basically stimulating hormone for the follicle, and this is a stimulating hormone for the luteinizing of them. So that's why they are produced in both sexes and play important role in controlling reproduction. But it is not like that they are just only presenting inside the female body. They actually present in both the sexes, male and female. Important role in controlling reproduction, and they have a major role to control the reproduction inside the body. Other hormones have specific functions in the male and female reproductive system. There are all other hormones also there which really have an important role inside the body of the male and female reproductive system. Now we are going to see the first, that is the male hormone. So at the onset of the puberty, the hypothalamus calls the release of FSH and LH into the male system for the first time. We know that how it is due by the action of the anterior pituitary. We got FSH and LH, and for that action, we have to know that GnRH is responsible. FSH enter in the testes and stimulate the sterol cells. So the first thing what the FSH do, that they are going inside the testes, the male reproductive organ, and stimulate the Sertoli cells to begin the facilitating spermatogenesis using negative feedback, as illustrated in figure 1. I will show you. So this whole process, that is a loop process. Okay, looping would happen inside the loop, that is a positive feedback on which something is stimulated. Second thing here, that is a negative stimulation that happens for stopping something. So that's why this FSH first start the Sertoli cell to begin facilitating, and after that, when the spermatogenesis happens, sperm formation is known as spermatogenesis. So when the sperm formation happen inside the testes, they will be going to send a negative feedback and stopping in the production of FSH. Now LH also enters the testes. When the FSH stimulated the Sertoli cells, then LH will come in figure. LH also enter the receipt and stimulate the interstitial layer or the cells of Leydig to make and release of testosterone into the testes and blood. After the first thing, sperms has been made by the stimulating Sertoli cell. But also LH has to do what LH has to do to basically stimulate the interstitial cell of latex. And what is the function of interstitial cell of latex? They are responsible to release the male hormone, that is an important hormone inside the male body, testosterone, into the testes and also in the blood. This is the combined function of FSH and LH in the male body. Now, where will we see the testosterone, important hormone for the male body? The hormone responsible for the secondary sexual characteristic that develop in male during adolescence, like stimulating spermatogenesis, sperm formation. And the secondary sex characteristic are basically like the hair growth, voice, hardening of the voice, axillary and pubic hairs, beginning of the sex drive. So these are the things which are come under the sexual secondary sexual characteristic. Primary sexual characteristic is all about the sperm formation. You can also see in a flow diagram. This is the diagram one which I was talking about. It I will show you. This is the one here. This is a pituitary hormone effect, okay? And pituitary hormones are LH and FSH. They will going to stimulate by the GnRH. Hypothalamus first secretes the GnRH, then GnRH going to stimulate anterior pituitary to secrete FSH and LH. Now FSH and LH come out from anterior pituitary. FSH going in the testes and stimulating the Sertoli cell, facilitates spermatogenesis. LH going to stimulate Leydig cells, and they are going to maintain the normal formation of sperms and basically the release of testosterone. So the testosterone releasing is responsible primarily for the spermatogenesis, secondarily for all the secondary characteristic present in the male body. Now, when these things are stimulated, when the Sertoli cells stimulated, Leydig is stimulated, and they are done with their work, after that, hormones should be stopped from the anterior pituitary to be secreted. So for this, that how they will going to stop, we will going to need this inhibin and testosterone to give a negative feedback to the anterior pituitary. Inhibin basically some inhibin and testosterone to anterior pituitary, and also the testosterone to the hypothalamus. Now these two hormones, they are going to negative feedback to the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary. Why? Because they are going to let them know that yes, the work you began, that is done. Now there is no need to secrete the GnRH for the stimulation of FSH and LH. So that's why after that, this hypothalamus is going to stop the production of GnRH, and anterior pituitary going to stop the stimulation of FSH and LH. So this is called, this one is positive, the green always positive, red is a negative feedback coming from these testis and Leydig cell in the form of inhibin from the Sertoli cells and in the form of testosterone by the Leydig cells. So this a negative feedback system occurs in the male with rising level of testosterone acting on the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary to inhibit the release of GnRH, FSH and LH. So you can see that how they can going to stop it. The Sertoli cell produce hormone inhibin which release into the blood when the sperm count is too high. Like if enough amount of sperm cells has been made, now the this hormone inhibin going to secrete. As its name suggesting, they are doing some process that is basically related to the inhibition. So that's why we name this hormone inhibin. So they just release when the sperm count is high. They are just going to the anterior pituitary and telling them to stop the production of FSH and LH. There is enough amount of the things have been made. So if the sperm count reaches 20 million per ml, the Sertoli cell sees the release of inhibin and the sperm count increases. So this after having this attained, like the 20 ml per ml. So after having this kind of a sperm count, they will be going to stop the inhibin. Sorry, stimulate the inhibin. Now this was all about the male hormone. Second hormone and how it is going to affect the female reproductive system, we are going to see. These are the female hormones. So the control of reproduction in female is more complex. Females are complex, so that's why the control of reproduction also complex. As with the male, the anterior pituitary hormones cause the release of the hormone FSH and LH. In addition here, estrogen and progesterone are released from the developing follicles. So here, basically, FSH and LH should be released the same manner as in the male. But now there are more complexity here. There are more hormones going to take part in the female developmental process. We will going to see how the estrogen and progesterone work here. Estrogen, which basically is both estrogen and progesterone, they are releasing when the follicles are developing. Follicles developing by the follicle stimulating hormone. So estrogen is a reproductive hormone in female that assists in endometrial regrowth. What are the function of estrogen? Be careful about that. They are endometrial regrowth, ovulation, and calcium absorption. So these are the function which has to be done by estrogen. Okay, so that's why releasing of estrogen in a accurate amount, in appropriate amount, is very important for the female body. It is also responsible for the secondary sexual characteristic of females, like as in the male, testosterone responsible for their secondary characteristic. Same in the female also, the estrogen is responsible for the secondary characteristic, like the breast development, flaring of pelvic zone, a shorter period necessary for bone maturation. So these all the secondary sexual characteristic that has been done or that has been developed by the estrogen. Now, the progesterone, they assist in endometrial regrowth and inhibition of FSH and LH release. So, basically, the function that was done by testosterone when the optimal amount of the sperm has been made by inhibin and testosterone. So, the same work progesterone do there. Progesterone are responsible for basically the inhibition of the FSH and LH. In female, FSH stimulate development of egg cells called ova. So, what is the function of FSH? Stimulating the egg cells. The fertilized cell has been stimulated by the FSH. Here, they will going to stimulate the egg cells called ova, which develop in structure called follicles, and they will ova that going to be developed in a structure that is known as the follicles. Follicle cells produce a hormone that is called inhibin. The same as the fertilized cell produce the hormone inhibin. So same, follicle cells are producing the hormone inhibin, which inhibit the FSH production. Okay, so that his whole loop thing, when the enough amount, or you can see the single ova has been formed inside the female body. So when the enough amount of the ova has been made, then they will be going to release a inhibin hormone for stopping the production of FSH. Now the LH. LH also plays important role in developing of ova. They are responsible for the developmental process. FSH stimulating the process. They are developing the process, and this is happen over time. LH also plays in the stimulation of estradiol and progesterone production by the ovaries, and LH, luteinizing hormone, that is also responsible for the production of the progesterone cells. Estradiol and progesterone, they are the steroid hormones. Okay, if we see the nature of the hormone, they are the kind of steroid hormones that prepare the body for the pregnancy. And what is their main function? To preparing the body for the pregnancy. Estradiol produce secondary sexual characteristic in female, while both estradiol and progesterone regulate the menstruational cycle. So estradiol, estrogen basically, produce secondary sex characteristic also in female, and this both progesterone and estrogen, they collectively or combinedly regulate the major menstruational cycle inside the female body. Now we will see the complexity of the female body in the terms of ovarian cycle and menstruational cycle. These are the cycle which made the female body more complex. The ovarian cycle governs the preparation of endocrine tissue and release of egg, while the menstruational cycle governs the preparation of maintenance of uterine lining. So, ovarian cycle prepare the endocrine tissue. Okay, remember these both the tissue, endocrine tissue and release the egg. Menstruational cycle prepare and maintain the uterine lining. If ova does not get fertilized, this will going to start depleting the uterine line by having the menstruational cycle. So these cycles occur concurrently and coordinated over 22 to 32 day cycles with an average length of 28 days. So every after 20 days in the woman body, this menstruation cycle and ovarian cycle happen over time. The first half of the ovarian cycle, I think I have the diagram. I will let you explain it, all the things by the diagram here. Okay. We'll see a theoretical part if it is needed after this diagram. I think it is clear to you. This is the follicle phase. Okay, that is the first thing when the hypothalamus is going to secrete the GnRH. Anterior pituitary, same. They are going to stimulate FSH and LH. The first FSH is going to here in ovaries and stimulating the follicle cells or ova production. And after this LH, they are going here and developing these follicles and ova cells. And after the follicle, when they are developing, they are going to secrete the estradiol, and these estradiol are the hormone which are going to kick up the andrometrium in the uterus. And after the enough amount of the development and estradiol production have been taken over, then they will giving a negative feedback to the hypothalamus. Same here after that, this is a first phase. Now we will go to the ovulation phase, that is the second phase. What happened here? This estradiol. Here, estradiol basically giving a positive feedback to the hypothalamus for kick up the ovarian hormone effect, or you can say by having this uterus and when they're secreting estrogen and progesterone. So having this estrogen, they will going to the stimulate for the ovulation process. So this is the ovulation of the pituitary hormone effect. Ovulation effect of, you can say, the pituitary hormone. That was the follicle phase when the follicles are developing. Second phase is all about ovulation, and third phase is about the luteal phase when if the body did not get any sperm to fertilize, then they will be going to the luteal phase in which menstruation happens. So here, ovarian hormone cycle, corpus luteum will be developed by in the ovary endometrium layer, and the progesterone here they will be basically secreting or development of the corpus luteum, and progesterone they are making this to the layer of the endometrium. So this all endometrium, corpus luteum, they are governed, or you can say the corpus luteum basically they are responsible for the formation of progesterone inside the female uterus. If there is no corpus luteum, no progesterone will be take place. Corpus luteum is a temporary organ inside the body, but it developed just to produce estrogen and progesterone. Like here also you can see the drip through fallopian tube, 7 days stated is of development that was now we will see. Just prior of the middle of the cycle, approximately day 14, the high speed of estrogen caused FSH and especially LH to rise rapidly and then fall. This spike in LH caused ovulation. This when they stimulating the FSH and LH and suddenly they got in the fall. This is called this spike in LH cause ovulation, and the most mature follicle, like in shown figure 3, rupture and release its egg. So the follicle that did not rupture degenerate their egg are lost, and the level of estrogen decreases when the extra follicle degenerates. So after if the degeneration of the ova, estrogen level always going to degenerate. Following ovulation, or you can say after the ovulation, the ovarian cycle enter in the luteal phase. So luteal phase, what happened in the luteal phase? Menstruational cycle enter in secondary phase, and both which run from about 215 to 28 days. The luteal and secondary phase refer to the changes in the ruptured follicle. So basically, the follicle which has been ruptured, now that follicle is going to undergo some physical changes, and when they are going to produce in some physical changes, that is called the corpus luteum, and this is the hormone that is going to produce estrogen and progesterone, but it is a temporary organ and always happen when the follicle break and form the corpus luteum. The progesterone facilitate the regrowth of uterine lining and inhibit the release of further FSH and LH. Now the progesterone come in picture, and they just set a negative feedback to stop production of FSH and LH. The uterus is being prepared to accept a fertilized egg. Should it occur during this cycle, the inhibition of FSH and LH prevent any further egg and follicle from developing. So now, if there is no FSH and LH, there will be no forming of new egg and no follicle will be developing inside. They are just waiting a egg to the fertilize, and if some egg has been fertilized, they can go inside and mature. But if it is did not happen, The level of estrogen produced by corpus luteum increases due to a steady increase for a next few phases. So at the time when they are waiting just for the fertilizing egg, at that time level of the estrogen that has to be high. If no fertilized egg is implanted into the uterus, the corpus luteum degenerates. So if there will be no fertilized egg, so what is corpus luteum is going to do? They are going to degenerate, and level of estrogen and progesterone decreases. So because they are just producing by the corpus luteum, if there is no corpus luteum, then there will be no estrogen and progesterone. So the andrometrium began to degenerate as the progesterone levels dropped, initiating the next menstruational cycle, and decrease in progesterone also allowed the hypothalamus to send GnRH to anterior pituitary, releasing FSH, LH, starting the cycle all over again. So after this whole corpus luteum thing to degenerate, level of progesterone and estrogen decreases. So the same whole process just going to back into the flow, and same hypothalamus and pituitary back in their functions. Here you can see it. This is follicle growth, that is a follicular phase, follicle released, and luteal phase, corpus luteum form, then degenerate. If there is no fertilization, corpus luteum going to be degenerate. And if they are having fertilization, they will be start making for the pregnancy. These are the days of menstruational cycle, and starting fourth day, that is a very major or important time to get a woman pregnant, because at this time the follicles or the eggs they are secreting in a zone of the ovulation. FSH, LH level are high, they are making follicles, developing follicles. So that's why this is the high time. Now we will going to see an overview of the hormonal control of the pregnancy and lactation. How these hormones are going to affect the pregnancy and lactation. We will see just an overview, not in very detail. So after fertilization, if fertilization happen inside the female body, the embryo spend first 4 days in the oviduct, that is called fallopian tube. So just the very first step, the ova will be happen inside the fallopian tube just after the fertilization for 4 days. The developing embryo is then transferred to the uterus. So after when the embryo has been developed, they are going to transfer inside the uterus and implants in the uterine endometrium. So where they are going to plant it, they are going to be planted in the uterus, and their layer, that is a determined layer for their plantation, that is uterine endometrium. This is, you can see this is a layer of endometrium. Inner cell mass, that is embryoblast. This is trophoblast. This is blastocyst cavity. They are going to fix in this layer. By D6, the trophoblast cell of the embryo begins to produce HCG. So this HCG, that is the very first hormone that is very important, or you can say this hormone is responsible for the formation of the embryo or implantation of the embryo inside the endometrium. So, in a normally developing embryo, HCG level in menstruational cycle will double every 3 days, reaching peak to the about 2 months of the pregnancy. So, you can see after till the 2 months of the pregnancy, HCG level will be so high. Progesterone level. Wow, how the progesterone level work in the pregnancy? To maintain the uterine endometrium and inhibit contraction of myometrium, plasma progesterone level must be maintained during the pregnancy. So basically, whole contraction of myometrium. This is a myometrium. So their contraction and inside their whole body, plasma progesterone levels should be maintained. Early in the pregnancy, this accomplished by the action of HCG, human chronic gonadotrophin hormone. So first, they can be, you can see that they have a full control over the progesterone level when the time is at the early pregnancy. On the corpus luteum, like the first 8 week of the pregnancy. Later in the pregnancy, progesterone is produced by the placenta. In the starting phases, when corpus luteum are there, so corpus luteum is responsible for the production of progesterone. So in a very initial phases, they are going to produce a progesterone, but after the 2 weeks, after the 2 months or 8 weeks, there will be placenta that has to be formed for nourishing the embryo inside the uterus, and the whole progesterone level then now will be governed by this placenta. Now, action of human chronic gonadotrophin, action of HCG hormone. So HCG bind to the luteinizing receptor in the corpus luteum. You know that luteinizing hormone that basically stimulate the developing of the follicle. They also present in the or their receptors are in the corpus luteum. So they bind to this LH HCG. They are going to bind the LH, and what they are going to maintain luteal steroidogenesis during the first 8 weeks of the pregnancy. So the first 8 weeks of the pregnancy is will be governed by the two hormones that are HCG plus LH combination. In addition, HCG may act to stimulate testosterone production from the developing testes in male embryo. So, like in addition, also HCG will also stimulate the testosterone. Also, if the body inside the female or embryo is a male embryo, then testosterone producing start for the developing of testes from just after the 8 months. And by this, in the 3 months, we will be able to analyze that the fetus, that embryo, that is male or female. Steroid production by the placenta. Now, how the placenta taking a role inside the pregnancy? So later in pregnancy, the placenta become the major steroidogenic organ of the pregnancy. However, the placenta require maternal LDL as a source of cholesterol for progesterone production. Still, placenta cannot secrete all the hormone by their own. They need something from the maternal tissues to produce the most of the hormones. So now, as they wanted to produce progesterone, they are going to need the LDL as a source for the cholesterol, and they will be going to produce the progesterone. The placenta is developed dependent upon the maternal and fetal adrenal as a source of androgen for aromatization to produce estrogen. Also, they are responsible for production of estrogen because estrogen are like the mother hormones. You can say they can give or bless the child with the aroma of their mother. Estrogen may be important in increasing uterine blood flow to the fetus, and estrogen, when enough amount of estrogen is produced inside the body by the placenta, then they will going to increase the uterine blood flow to the fetus. Because for the development, fetus need the different amount of nutrition, and how they are going to get this different amount of nutrition, they will going to get this different amount of nutrition by the blood of mother. So, and the maturation of fetal organ system. Now, the pasteurization or the process of childbirth. At this time, what kind of hormones are going to play an important role? So the mechanism signaling the onset of labor are not clearly understood. So we cannot just clearly set that what things basically involve or what thing trigger. But still, there are some potential theories about it, like the major role of the progesterone. So decreasing progesterone prior to labor would allow uterine contraction to occur. Basically, progesterone is working for the uterine contraction. If there will be no progesterone, contraction will be start up inside the uterus. However, there is no decline in progesterone before labor in women, but there will be no decline, or you can say no decrease in the progesterone before the labor in humans. So this is just happen at the time of the like water break. So this is a time when the decrease in the progesterone can be happen. But actually, this is the time we cannot research on it because that was a very key, a very hard time for a mother. So we cannot analyze it taking the blood at that time or doing all these things. So some studies suggested that there is a decline in uterine progesterone receptor resulting in decreased progesterone action leading to labor. And some said that there will be a very decrement or you can say decrease in the number of receptors. So if the receptor is decreased, so that the process of progesterone has been decreased. You can see the positive feedback cycle that contribute the initiation of pasteurization. So this is the central system, progesterone, how the progesterone is governing the cortisol, prostaglandin, uterine contraction, cervical ripening. But at the time of parturition, or you can say the childbirth, there is a hormone that is called relaxant that has been released to just feel this relaxin hormone actually they perform the function like towards the motherness of a female because at this is a time that is a very painful time, so something in the body that gives some motivation to mother to feel that pain for something good. So that's why this relaxant hormone secreted inside the body, and that basically is a good kind of hormone at that time. We will going to see their role, potential role of oxytocin in the parturition. So oxytocin causes uterine contraction. So the contraction, this whole contraction phenomena is happen because of oxytocin. So they are responsible for when the contraction happen. If the contraction has not happened, then there will be no coming out of the baby. So that's why this contraction should be there, and this contraction governed by the oxytocin. However, oxytocin level do not increase until after labor start, according to more recent studies. But that level is has to be maintained. This increase just at the time of labor. Until after labor, they will not going to have that major role. Oxytocin may play a role in uterine contraction following labor, resulting in decrease of blood loss. So this oxytocin, they have the play a major role by the uterine contraction and following labor, by which that they doing this because so they can tell the body to reduce the blood loss. So that's why oxytocin work in the blood loss. Potential role of relaxant, that was I was talking to you about. Another marker of corpus luteum function is a polypeptide hormone relaxant. So if we see their components, so this is a polypeptide hormone and this is called relaxin. Relaxin become detectable at about the same time as HCG begins to rise and certain concentration are maintained for remainder at the pregnancy until later. So some portion of the relaxin is like all the time with inside the female body along with the HCG. But relaxin also decrease uterine contractility during pregnancy and also they decreases the contraction like the progesterone. Relaxin act on the cervix, causing dilation and softening. And major function of the relaxin that they do the dilation and make the cervix tissue more soft, so that female do not feel that kind of pain. Relaxin does act on softened connective tissue such as ligament connecting the pelvic bones to allow increase in the size of the birth canal. So they also increase the size of the birth canal by relaxing the ligaments and the softened tissue and increasing the size. Potential role of prostaglandin in pasteurization. So prostaglandin causes dilation and softening of the cervix, and prostaglandin also cause uterine contraction, and the level of prostaglandin, that is called PJs, increase the fetal membrane before the onset of labor. So these are the function. They are very closely related to the function like oxytocin and relaxin. Relaxin and oxytocin also have the function and related to the contraction and the relaxin and this prostaglandin. They have the similar kind of function like dilation, softening of cervix, and make a birth canal to a bigger for easy pasteurization. So that are the function that is done by it. Now the lactation. Lactation is a delivery of milk from the mammary gland. So basically, these are the things which controlled by milk synthesis and milk production. That is whole. You can say this is controlled by the hormone called lactin. What are the functions? So there are three more, four stages of lactation that is controlled by different hormones. First process here, milk synthesis in alveolar cells. Alveolar cells in which milk synthesis has been take place. Lactogenesis, secretion of milk from alveolar cell to alveolar lumen. That is the second form. Galactopiosis, maintenance of milk production and release into alveolar lumen. So they just maintain it, neither too much nor too little milk can be produced. Milk ejection, movement of milk from alveolar cell into the duct system and out of the breast. So these are the four processes from alveolar to the lumen, from maintenance and production to release into the alveolar lumen. These are lumens, okay. And after this is a duct, and after that they will be going to ejection of the milk for the baby nutrition. So lactation, the first function is to milk synthesis. So that is done by increased level of prolactin, and this is also governed by the pituitary and human placental lactation. So these two hormones during the pregnancy, this HPL released from the placenta and started on governing the mammary glands to perform the milk production. So that's why you can say that how the also the high level of progesterone and estrogen during the pregnancy they initiate the lactation, or you can see the lactic acid or prolactin formation by the pituitary. Lactogenesis, they will be stimulated by prolactin and occur after the parturition when estradiol and progesterone levels are decreased. Lactogenesis only happen at the position of when the progesterone and estrogen levels are decreased. Galactopoiesis, the maintain of the established milk production caused by prolactin. Galactopoiesis is also governed by the prolactin phenomena. Milk ejection, movement of milk from alveolar ducts into the main duct system that has to be done by the oxytocin. So oxytocin is a hormone that is responsible for the milk ejection. Lactogenesis and galactopoiesis, they are done by the prolactin plus lactogenesis also by estrogen and progesterone when decrease, and the first milk synthesis collectively by the prolactin and the HPL. So these are the regulation of oxytocin and prolactin during lactation. So basically, they give a positive feedback effect on the breastfeeding on the production of oxytocin and prolactin. So oxytocin level increases due to suckling of the breast by the infant. Basically, this is like the attachment of the mother towards their babies that going to release in the form of oxytocin hormone. And after that, prolactin start all the function which has been led by the oxytocin. So this is all about the hormones which control the male body, or hormones which control the over the female reproductive organs, and after that you will see how the hormones have a control over a pregnancy and lactation. So I think this is enough for just the overview part how the hormone control over our body reproductive patterns. Still, there are some differences you can go through and make more knowledge about the reproductive pattern, how hormones influence on reproduction pattern, and got to know about it. Thank you. So that's all for today. Still, if you guys have any problem, you can ask.